I believe that those companies who are really successful, they are starting with why. So they have a strong purpose, which helps them through the really hard times, what they have to go through with their companies. Because we all know that to be an entrepreneur is like a roller coaster, right? So there are days when you are flying and there are days when you cannot even sleep because the pressure is just so much. And if you have a strong why, a strong purpose, then you are able to go much better and much longer.
Welcome to EBMR Podcast, where intelligent financing meets strategic thinking. So I have a special guest for you today. She's actually a strategist when it comes to business owners and entrepreneurs. We have Judith Sas with us in the podcast today. Judith, how are you this morning?
Hi, Andres. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm great. It's really great to be here.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. By the way, I just said morning, but I should correct that you are not in the morning right now. Where are you at?
I am in Berlin, Germany.
Berlin, Germany. Oh my God. I've never been, but I have to. Basically, I need an excuse now to go there. So that is beautiful. Judith, really, we're very excited to talk to you today because when we met, we discussed a couple of things that you are basically, you have a mission, you have a purpose, which is really helping billion-dollar companies, especially these founders and entrepreneurs, to be able to foresee problems in the future. So I want to talk a little bit about your background and expertise, then I want you to expand on it. So you work with established entrepreneurs, founders, and investors who have already built something meaningful, but to get to the next level, they need to really sharpen their thinking, maybe make cleaner decisions and stronger structures. So I want to talk to you about a couple of things. I heard 5 pillars that you're going to teach us today, that you're going to talk to us today, that you use to help. But also, tell us about your background and expertise. Who have you worked with before? What has been your career before we got to meet?
So I am actually a Hungarian, and in the beginning, I used to work at a bank in Hungary and later in the Czech Republic. And I was working with high net worth individuals. This is where I got a lot of my knowledge in the beginning. And as I got more and more advanced, I studied from billionaires like Cardone, Dean Graziosi, and other big names from the industry.
That is awesome. Actually, you just mentioned a name. Well, Grant Cardone, I haven't been in the same room with him. But Dean Graziosi, I have been in the same room. Actually, I did Date with Destiny back in 2014. He was in that same, so we were 6 days locked into a room with like 3,000 people, but he was like a couple of rows above me. So I remember doing that. I mean, just that you mentioned that name. So that's fantastic. So you have followed basically a lot of the, these strategies, because really that's what I believe that we are basically in this particular realm, strategies. So tell us, what is it that you see that for the companies that are successful, for the founders and basically the business owners that are successful, what are they doing that is basically different from the ones that are not doing? Tell us a little bit about your 5-pillar system and how you're protecting clients.
Okay, so first of all, what the companies are doing, which are more successful, is I don't know if you know Simon Sinek.
Yes.
But Simon Sinek has a really good either TED Talk or book where he says, start with why. And I believe that those companies who are really successful, they are starting with why. So they have a strong purpose, which helps them through the really hard times, what they have to go through with their companies. Because we all know that to be an entrepreneur is like a roller coaster, right? So there are days when you are flying and there are days when you cannot even sleep because the pressure is just so much. And if you have a strong why, a strong purpose, then you are able to go much better and much longer.
Well, so strong purpose. I love that, because I think that that is basically the root of making clearer decisions. When you have a strong purpose, you don't deviate, correct? because life is going to pull us
Yes.
from so many different places. So tell us about how you have to make those decisions, or what is your process, to get to the purpose and get to the business owners really stay basically focused on the task ahead or the mission.
So actually, I am stealing an exercise from Dean Graziosi. He has a really, really great exercise. It's called 7-level D. And in this 7-level D, he is saying that you have to ask yourself 7 times why. And as you are repeating why, you are going deeper and deeper. And in the beginning, of course, money is a motivation. But as you go deeper, you realize that, it's not really the money. There is something much more deeper than that. Like usually it's stability, control, and such a things that I never want to go back into that situation again or something like similar.
That is beautiful. Actually, I love that, because yes, I've been told that I'm annoying because I'm constantly asking why. Wait, do you want people reach out for capital, right? So it's like, okay, I want $1 million. I'm like, okay, why? Well, I want to buy this. Why? And why? And why? Once we get to the point, it's like, wait, you are focusing on the wrong thing. And actually, we probably can choose better capital for a better asset or for a better strategy when it comes to value injection of the money than what they would have spent. I mean, clearly, I don't remember basically having that particular strategy basically in my head, but I'm always asking why. What is the why of the business owner, the entrepreneur? So I think that you do the same. So I love that thing. So after you get to the why, then how do you start then going to the next level?
So if we have the why, then of course we have to take a look at how the person thinks himself or herself. Because very often we came from broke families, and it means that we are making decisions while we are allowing bad behaviors. What I mean by that is that people very often are okay with disrespect, are okay with manipulation and those kind of stuff. And I believe if you want to really build a strong business, you have to say no to the disrespect, to manipulation, and to those kind of behavior patterns. And if you see that a business partner of you is doing such a move, then you might cut them off completely. First you have to, of course, warn them. And if they are changing the behavior, then it's okay to continue the relationship. If they are not, then you just cut them down, because in the long term, the inner peace means so much more for you.
Inner peace. I love that word. And I think that comes from fulfillment of knowing that you're doing exactly what God designed you to do here in this earth. I mean, and regardless of what you believe in, that's what I believe in. But I see that in many of my friends, brothers, sisters, and entrepreneurs, other business owners, and founders that are living their purpose, because they understood basically that they're aligned. They're aligned what they came here on this earth to do. So, Judith, it looks like you're doing it as well. So I can see that you're aligned with the universe. Tell us, after then we get to this piece, how does this reflect on growth for the business owner or the entrepreneur? How do you see that flourishing?
So what really often happens is that business owners, exactly because they are not handling this kind of issues, instead of like handling again these issues, they are just overlooking that and letting this kind of behavior sneak into their businesses. So I have been working with an owner of a travel agency where the things got so bad that actually instead of rethinking his approach, he just started to give up on his business. He had over 1,100 properties, but because his business partners were not behaving correctly, he wasn't able to say that here are my boundaries. If you overlook them, then I'm not working with you anymore. So this is why he started to withdraw and almost left his business completely.
That is very interesting because you're talking about investors here, like on properties and so forth. I mean, because we get this request all the time for, okay, we want to acquire more. Okay. But a lot of times it's just acquiring for the sake of acquiring does not make sense, especially if it's not aligned to the end in mind. And I think that we discussed this, and I mentioned it before when we're talking about the 5 stages of business entrepreneurship. what we see is a lot of entrepreneurs starting or keeping the same behavior that we've seen basically when they started startup on early stage, and they just continue to be in that, and they just think that that's how they're going to take the business to level 5, let's say in this case, where it's mature or acquired maybe by a private equity firm or by a large corporation, just because it integrates vertically. That's the exit that you want to think in mind when you are designing what to acquire as an investor or as a company. So that's a great analogy, Judith. I think that it's you are helping the business owner, the entrepreneur, the founder by going through the thinking of why they're doing things. How is that going to translate basically in the future for the betterment of the company? What else can you tell us about the process that you have, with your 5 pillars system that we can learn today?
Yeah, so this was the first pillar, is actually about the personal fire initiator. And in the second one, we are going to examine your marketing and branding system. In the third one, we are talking about structures. How do you structure your company? And I mean here, like holding structures or even bigger. How do you manage everything? And also, what kind of processes have you implemented? How are you able to make your business more effective? On the first one, we are going to talk about properties. This is one of my favorite topics, so I can talk a lot about it because I have been specialized in property entrepreneurs mostly, and I see a lot of them making huge mistakes, which are costing them a lot of money and time in the long term. And on the fifth one, we are talking about the complete clue. In the complete clue asset creator, we are talking about how you can make your business using liquid assets actually future proof. And under the liquid assets, we are talking about stocks, options, futures, whatever you can use in your company in order to make it more stable. Also, you will be able to save on taxes, your currency risk, and those kind of things.
I like what you're saying. So for our audience and people that are listening to us right now and watching us, they're hearing several things, because you're focusing on the well-being of the business owner, entrepreneur, investor, where those asset allocations and capital uses are going, and then how do you protect yourself from, different risk. I believe that previously, before we started filming, we discussed the intricacies of, let's say, managing international capital, and this has been my background. I've been an international banker before. By the way, I'm an ex-banker too. So congrats. You were doing it definitely in another area compared to me. I was here in the United States. We started seeing the way you manage or the way you allocate capital in different countries, right? You get a different type of risk of exposure. And I think that we can see that right now, the latest news that we're seeing, and this basically I want to bring up because let's say Iran. Right now, for those entrepreneurs, business owners, or wealth management need individuals, well, if you had any capital right now in Iran, well, guess what? You're taking a hit at this moment because we've seen, that currency basically now lower and crumble down, and it's because of everything that we're seeing. But basically, the exposure, the risk out there, it's higher than in other places. Tell us a little bit about how you help business owners with the liquid asset, the taxes. How do you go through the process of making them think, how to protect this?
Yeah, so it always depends on what the entrepreneur needs, what they do. Of course, so I'm a Hungarian, so we have learned back then in 2008 that the currency risk or risk of devisa fluctuation, devisa rates fluctuation is really important. And if you don't handle that, then it can mean that actually your business gets wiped out. So this is why I'm helping entrepreneurs to find these kind of tiny little risk, especially around the currencies and how they are able to stabilize their income. If you are doing import or export, or you are doing businesses in multiple locations, then it's extremely important and you are taking care of the devisa risk or currency risk, however you want to name it. And because if you don't do that, then it can be that you are facing huge risk. Actually, one of my biggest clients, he wants them to build in Egypt, and he's based in Berlin. But if Egypt, the currency is fluctuating really badly. It has lost its 1/3 of value in just 3 years. And if he would have invested, because he was saying that the prices were always going up, 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 and they are making incredible profits. But on the other side, if you are comparing it to the inflation, then actually it means that you are still losing money. And if he is investing like that, using investor money, then it can cost him reputation and a lot of money in the long term. So these are the things which I highlight, and also I help the people to connect with professionals who are able to help them handle this kind of currency risk or hedge.
Very true, because we do work with a lot of binational companies. I mean, we have clients basically in this hemisphere that are basically looking at their supply chain, doing mergers and acquisitions, or international even on the side that how do we tighten our supply chain? Or basically what is affecting right now our product with the current tariff situation that we have here in the United States. Now, why do we do that? Because we've been talking to them for gosh, I mean, I want to say like over a year about all of the changes that were coming with the new administration here in the United States with Donald Trump that are mentioning that, hey, our supply chain is going to tighten. So, guess what? If we had dependencies on different supply chains that we saw change on the first administration with actually from China going to Vietnam and then India. We had people like basically bouncing back and forth looking for a better trade transaction because of the tariffs. Well, right now, I mean, we're seeing it. We have clients that are Chinese companies that were importing products from China, now bringing their manufacturing here into the United States, into Texas in particular, because we are basically, as you know, with different states come different tax code exercises, that we're going to have. And that is really where the world is going. Like, I mean, we really have to evaluate what we have if we have any assets all over the world. And you mentioned with the capital that you have on the personal side, if you are invested in different countries, we're seeing basically how that international capital is being affected by different exercises that different companies or different countries really are having, depends on basically their situation, geopolitical, and you name it. We see that with the trade between Mexico, especially because we have a lot of supply chain that are mixed here from Mexico and the United States. If you keep things in Mexican pesos, it's different than what you get here with the dollars. And then people tell me, well, they're paying me more in interest. I'm like, yeah, but they're paying you more in interest in pesos, in Mexican pesos. And then how much are the banks charging you? Because here we have basically a cleaner disclosure when it comes to APYs, annual percentage yield. So they're going to tell you, hey, this is how much you're going to make on a money. In other countries, they charge you fees and fees and fees. I mean, we've seen that basically from a comparison in Mexico. Is that a good example, by the way?
I believe it can be a good example, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, Judith. Well, I love everything that you're doing. If you are listening to us right now for our audience and you have questions on how, wow, this is very interesting because I do have a lot of exposure basically with different countries, supply chains and so forth. And I want to talk to Judith. Judith, how do you get people to come and talk to you? Tell us basically, how we can get acquainted with you and start maybe discussing, all of these questions that our audience may have.
And so I have a page, obviously. It's called judithsas.com, and you are able to reach me out or on LinkedIn. I usually ask the people to go through my 5-day challenge because it helps you to also organize everything in yourself, and it also helps me to see much deeper in your business before we even sit down to talk, and then I'm able to prepare myself to talk to you.
I love that. Well, that is a process. I mean, and that is basically the best way to start a relationship, because it's about setting the right process, expectations. These clients or these entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, they want a clear decision making strategy when things come under pressure. And you can have basically a stronger leadership. behavior and personal discipline. I believe that that is basically a mindset, that you really got to build when you're managing, as you mentioned, millions and billions of dollars, of capital, for a company. Judith, I believe that we probably can talk a lot more about this, but I want to be respectful of your time and, of course, our audience. You want to close the podcast with maybe, a thought or, maybe a question, for our audience, so they can, take something with them and maybe they can think about contacting you.
So I believe in helping people. I believe in helping in building a community where entrepreneurs are not really competing with each other, but more like cooperating. Because I believe this is the future when people are cooperating and they are helping each other to the next level of potential. And it's not just on business level, but on personal level.
I love that. Actually, so we're in capital and we do loans for a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, and investors as well. And also we do consult in the areas of fiscal code, operations, you name it. When I talk to my banker friends, and I'm sure you do as well, because that's who approach me. I mean, it is the bankers, that are trying to help the clients. I always tell the clients, look, your banker wants to help you. Now, each bank individually, they have their own requirements and their own boxes that they want to fill. So don't take it against, the banker. I've been there myself. I used to represent, the largest corporations here, basically in the United States. And and I have the awards right there, to tell you about that. But one of the things that I focus on is how can I help the client? And you do as well. So it's not about competing with any bank or anything like that. It's like, okay, so where do you want to get to? Let's a lot of times we partner up, because there are maybe, things that they have capabilities that we don't, or vice versa. We have capabilities that each bank doesn't have. But it's all about taking care of people. So I love that you believe in helping people. That is in the end our mission as well. So we're aligned in that as well. Judith, I want to thank you so much. And I know that basically it has been a hectic day for you today out there in Berlin, Germany, by the way. So I'm looking forward to seeing greatest success on your end, Judith, and helping other people achieve success. Well, I want to thank you so much for being in the podcast today. And
Thank you very much, Andres.
thank you
It was
so
a
much.
pleasure meeting you.
It was a pleasure meeting you as well, Judith. And I hope that we can see you again and we can talk a little bit more maybe in the future, to inform a lot more people what's going on. And of course, I want to see you in the next podcast.